Hey there, Ride the Car Guy here, and today let's get a CB into the 8-ball. It's cold out, but I am far too lazy to shuffle around all the cars and get this thing into the garage, especially since I'm currently doing an engine swap on the Silver Xterra. In just 2 days, I'm going to be heading to northern Michigan and hitting some trails, and I would just like to have a CB installed just in case we're out of cell signal. I can reach other vehicles and other people that I'm with. I already spent way too long figuring out where I want to put this thing, so let's just jump straight to the install. Should be pretty quick and easy. For the location, I think we're going to throw it right on top of the radio like this. Generally, I don't like putting electronics in the sun, but this is Michigan and the sun shines like twice a year, so we're good there. Also, I like the idea that this is a removable tray. So if we pop this tray out, and this one's actually already broken in a couple places, but if you just pop it out, these things are easy to come by. I can go to a junkyard and get 3 of these right now. So I don't feel bad at all carving into this thing and making it a place to mount the CB. So let's go do that, and then we'll run all the wires. So if we're gonna have the radio looking something like this, and based on the way the other piece is formed in the truck, we're gonna have to cut our access hole like right here because this is all flat on the bottom. You'll see it once we go back in there. And so I'm gonna basically wrap the wires around and put them in through here. So big hole here, mount the bracket here, and I already know I'm gonna have to offset it because of this here. If we have the antenna cable coming out, it's gonna hit if we have it basically turned down. So I need to put the back end up, and so I need to offset this with a couple washers. So the bracket has slots for mounting, and I put the holes I'm going to put the holes closer to the center because I'm going to put my wire access hole right in the corner here, and we're going to cover up most of it with the bracket. For that hole, I'm going to start with a pretty big bit, and then I'm going to use my step bit to get up to, I think, about 7/8 is what's going to require the antenna cable, because those have a pretty big connection on them. And I'm going to start with that one. Man, do I love drilling in plastic. Looks like 7/8 is probably a little big. 13/16, maybe even 3/4 I would have gotten away with, but man, that looks clean. That step bit does such a good job. For the bolts, I found some nice square shoulder bolts that are gonna make for a really clean installation. I figured if I have the slots, it was pretty nice. I just had to grind down the shoulders just a tiny bit to make them fit in the slots, but now I'm gonna be able to put these down here. It's going to have, you know, like I said, nice and clean installation. So all I got to do now is drill the holes, put in a couple washers, and then I have some locking nuts for the backside to hold this all in place. I have a couple of plastic spacer washers that will punch out to the right diameter. So you just kind of force it on there, pops them out. And now I can just slide this in, see if it goes in there. You can see we're going to be offset, and we have enough space for our lock nuts. So I'm just going to grab the radio, line it up, make sure we're in a good place here. What I was looking to do is to make this lateral, so when we install this, it isn't hitting the back of the plate. Awesome, so that piece is done. Let's go run the wires and hook it all up. So I thought long and hard about where I want the antenna, and I decided I want it right there. And the reason I chose here is because, first of all, I don't like running wires the entire length of vehicles. I find it annoying. And secondly, there is a giant grommet right below the hood in this area that's going to get us into the cab. One thing though, this is a magnet mount, and so this location likely is not going to work if I try to leave it as a magnet mount. So what I'll probably end up doing, I mean, we can test it, but with that wind, you know, if I'm going down the highway, this thing's likely going to slide off. But I'm going to probably take off this felt bottom and just get like double-sided like Gorilla Tape, and that sucker won't go nowhere. But in the meantime, I'm going to set it here and make sure that when I open the hood, it doesn't obstruct with my snorkel, which it does not. Perfect. It looks like it just misses it, so we'll leave it there. And for the cable, we're just going to run it behind the hood, and I can set it underneath this little weather seal here. So just behind the hood, pull it all the way through, and then I'm just going to run it under this little weather seal here and then into the hood area. I'll probably get a little piece of loom or something to protect this against this sharp edge, but that'll just be wrap up. And the grommet we're going to use is right below where we just put the antenna, to the right of your brake booster behind your ABS block. And there's actually a ton of space back here, and it's a giant grommet with a small harness going through. Now the way that I handle these is I usually just get a razor blade and I make a hole that's going to be big enough for just the head of the wire to kind of squeeze its way through. And then once it's through, the grommet sort of closes back down on the cable and sort of minimizes how big of a hole there is. All right, so if we grab a little blade here, I just have a box cutter. I'm just going to push it in, and as long as you keep the blade away from this here, obviously your harness going through, then you'll be fine. So let me just push right about there. I'll try to like do this so you can see. Pushing it like that, and I'm going to flip it to the other side and do the same thing, like flip the blade, that is. So now I have a pretty decently sized hole, and I should have no issue getting this guy through it. So let's see. Sorry guys, you're gonna have trouble seeing this. Yeah, there you go. So now if I push this through, I'm gonna pull it through from inside the cab here. And I'm gonna leave some slack out here, but if you see, it really minimizes how much you're actually exposing or, you know, creating space through there. So we'll do a little wire management out here. I'll probably strap it to this. We'll zip tie it to this existing harness so it stays in place. And then we are in the cabin, we're good. Under the driver's side, it just popped through right there and it comes through pretty easily. And so again, I'll probably strap it to this harness and run it up. Then we'll strap it in front of the pedals, make sure it's all secured, and then get it behind the radio. So before finalizing and kind of getting all the cables tied up underneath the driver's side, I actually like to get this to the device first. And the reason I like to do that is because I don't want the slack, so all this extra cable, to be behind the radio. I'd much rather have it in this kick panel down here. So I'm gonna get this to the radio first, and then figure out how much slack I have, and then work my way backwards. We can do that very quickly. If we just pull this off, normally there's a screw there, I just don't have one. And then if we just shove this guy up here, we're gonna find it right behind the HVAC controls. Right there, cool. And in fact, I think I'm actually gonna run it, no, I decided I'm gonna run it to the left of the vent. So hold on. If you look down to the left of your vent, you're gonna see you can see a straight path all the way down to the floorboards. So I'm gonna pull that up, get it around my vent. There we go. And now it's right there. If I run it through this, I know that I'm gonna come back here, and then it's gonna connect right there. And that's how much slack I need. So I'm actually happy with that right there. So now I can go back underneath and then put all my slack down in that kick panel. All right, so back under here, we can see this goes up to the left of the vent over here. And then I'm just gonna run it along this, you know, basically along the bottom of this. And I'll zip tie it a couple times along the way. But the important part is making sure that we have all of our slack tucked away. And for that, I'm just gonna grab my cable and I'll zip tie it all up before I throw it in here. We have it like that, perfect. And then that's gonna sit right behind this. Actually, you know what? I decided, I forget this every single time, but when you're running a cable across your driver's side footwell, get the cable above the hood latch, and that way it's not gonna obstruct with your actual switch. So I'm actually gonna pull it back down real quick and then run it over top of this, and then I'll cinch it all up. All right, so we're gonna actually finalize the install of the radio itself, and we can do that because the power wires are hardwired into the back of the radio, and I'm just gonna use the same ground that I did for the radio itself, which is just on the bracket. So to wrap this up, grab your antenna cable, and then route it through the actual bezel, the radio bezel there, because then it has to come through that way. And then the opposite way for the power cables. So power cables come in here, and they go through the hole in the tray we made. I'm gonna set the radio up here so I have some extra space. And I'm going to cut and splice my ground by running it backwards through this, through the bezel. And then I'm gonna cut and splice with enough to actually put it on the ground itself. That way when I pull this off, I'm not having to like pull the ground out each time. Pull it out, there we go. And I'm just gonna include it with the radio ground. Actually, I'm just gonna throw it on the other side. It doesn't really matter. It's ground on both sides. I only want one super classy squish ground per side here. And any excess for that, all right, so that's good. Any excess for that can kind of be shoved in the back there. All right, with that one cinched down, I'm gonna do the same thing. Just grab the power. I'm gonna grab the power side, wire it through here, and then push it down to the right of the radio, basically down to underneath here. And then we can just go fetch that in a little bit. Now we just kind of assemble everything. Push it all in. All right, just gently setting that in place. Put our antenna cable through. Awesome, it's kind of a mess in here, I'm not gonna lie. All right, push that in place. Flip this around, and now we should be able to mount this straight into the basket here. I'm gonna attach the antenna cable so I know I have enough length. Then I'm gonna lift it up and pull all my excess wiring. All right, grab my spacer. I'm actually gonna set them like this. There we go. Then grab my nuts, and then I'll set those aside, and I'll flip this up. Oh no, oops, well, that didn't go well. Never mind, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna set my washers up like this here, and just drop it down on. Yeah, that's easier. There we go. Now grab my nuts there, like that. And then I can cinch them down. Awesome. So now if I just make sure that when I do the final install, or so to speak, I can just sort of grab all the excess cable, tuck it down there, and then this should Yeah, snap right back into place. Excellent. Not bad. Let's hook up the power. Now our power is going to be probably one of the easiest parts because we have an ADA circuit. I absolutely adore these things. They allow you to push directly into the fuse block and add a circuit to an existing line. So if we open our glove box and pinch the sides, should be able to pull it down. And if you put your cable in the right area, right there, you can find it and drop it below the glove box. And in fact, I'm going to do the same with my audio cable because I hate it being in the glove box. I'm pushing this straight down till it hits the floorboards. And then push that back up. And now we have our cables down here. Well, in this case, I just have my audio cable, but we have our power cable here and we can run it to our fuse block, which looks like there's gonna be just enough space. If you pull the cover off your fuse block and flip it over, you get a little map. And what's so great about this is it will tell you on each one whether or not it runs on ACC, ignition, or the battery. So basically the different positions of the key. Now, why that's so great is you can choose to jump onto a particular circuit based on what type of power you want. For me, I don't want this to run unless the ignition is on, right? Or at least an accessory. So that way, if I forget to turn it off, I'm not just gonna drain my battery. This one looks good. It says mirror, it says ACC 10 amp, and it's just gonna run, in my case, the power mirrors. I don't have defrost mirrors. It might run defrost, so keep that in mind, but just the power mirrors, and I'm rarely adjusting those. So this is basically a nearly unused circuit, so we're gonna grab that. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up on the left. So on this one, I'm just gonna run a butt connector. I already have it connected on this side. So I'm gonna slide it in and connect it. Once it feels good, I'm gonna slide it up behind the fuse block and plug it in. Pretty easy, you just kind of tuck it up there. There we go. And then we count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's that 10 right there. Use our fuse puller, which this one is quite terrible. So I'm just gonna use some needle nose. And on these, the one that's closest to your wire is for your new circuit, and this one is for the existing circuit. So we're gonna put the 10 amp in there, and then we're gonna flip it around and push it in. Throw this back on, shut your glove box, and we're ready to rock. Now for the unit itself, I went with the Uniden Pro 505 XL. It seemed like a good value for the dollar. It had pretty good reviews, and it's called a Bearcat. I mean, what's cooler than a Bearcat? So I think this is how it's gonna spend most of its life. I'm gonna leave the actual microphone off, you know, obviously because I just don't want this sitting here hanging all the time. So when I am off-roading and I do wanna use it, I can just quickly grab this thing, slide it in, and get it connected. I'll probably mount it over here, just like this. When I want it, I can just grab it, and I have pretty good access to it. So based on the way we wired it, obviously if I turn it on right now, it's not gonna work. But then if I flip the key into the accessory position and then turn it on, I get power. Then when I flip the key off, it turns off so I don't forget and drain my battery. This unit has a PA option, and you can set up an auxiliary speaker. So what I think I'll probably end up doing is running the cable from this straight to the radio and treating it as an input, so that way I can have the CB going to the entire radio. And who knows, maybe I'll set up a PA speaker later on. All in all, it's a pretty clean install. I mean, we didn't have to do major modifications. I don't like drilling through the firewall or drilling through the body or anything like that, so we avoided that. And the location inside is all right. We'll kind of see how it goes. I didn't realize how many clips and screws were missing out of that center bezel area, so it might do a little bit of bouncing. If I do have any updates for you, I'll put them down in a pinned comment below. All the parts that I use for this, like the radio, the antenna, that's actually sold separately, and the ADA circuits, I'll put links down below in the description so you can go find those. Also down below, comment where you end up putting your CB. Obviously, you know, there's many places you can put it. I decided right in front and center, and I may end up regretting it. If this video helped you, please go ahead, scroll down, click that like button, subscribe for more content like this, and if this video saved you a lot of time or money, you can say thanks by buying me a beer. Scroll down and click that super thanks button to do that. Now, if you excuse me, I gotta go sit in here and scroll through channels and see if I can find anyone to talk to. Later.